Hi, I'm Brian. Today, I'm going to show you the beginning of my biggest project so far, and it is inspired by one of my favorite video games, The Witcher 3: Wild Hunt. I have a large Tavern set that I acquired from a Kickstarter project that was available in the late summer of 2025. The model for this Tavern set was created by a team of designers within a group called World of Pratheron, or at least I think that's how they pronounce it. The set is directly inspired by the inn that is in the village of White Orchard, the tutorial area of The Witcher 3. World of Pratheron called their project Mournstead, which was probably done due to copyright reasons. My project is not sponsored by or endorsed by World of Pratheron or anyone who is involved with the creation of the models. I'm just printing and painting the set for fun. I printed all the pieces of the Tavern with my 3D printer and my filament, and it took about 80 hours over the course of 6 days. The smallest piece took about 2.5 hours to print, while the largest piece took a little over 15.5 hours to print. In the first phase of my project, I'm going to focus on painting all of the roof pieces, where there are 6 pieces in total. In the second phase of my project, I'm going to focus on painting the outside of the ground floor, and there are 5 of these pieces. In the third phase of my project, I'm going to paint the outside of the second floor, and I'm planning on painting the inside of the tavern at some point, but I have a lot to do before I get there. What you're going to see in this video is the first part of the roof phase, and I'll describe how this project got started. I was introduced to The Witcher 3: Wild Hunt a little over a year ago, and I played through the game twice, including both DLC expansions. This was my first entry into the Witcher video game series, and I liked the game, but I didn't spend as much time with it compared to a lot of other role-playing games I've played. If you're not familiar with The Witcher 3 or the Witcher franchise as a whole, I suggest you look it up because I'm not going to explain the backstory or all the different media since it's not relevant to my project. As I mentioned before, this tavern is inspired by the inn within the village of White Orchard, the tutorial area of the game where the protagonist, Geralt of Rivia, starts his journey. When I saw the Kickstarter project for Mournstead last summer, I recognized the tavern as the White Orchard Inn, and even though the description didn't mention anything about The Witcher 3, it was obvious that there was a direct inspiration. It took about a month to receive the files after the Kickstarter ended, but I didn't start printing the tavern until about a week ago. I planned on starting this project earlier, but the printer filament I ordered was delayed, and unfortunately I was sent the wrong color. I ordered a couple of rolls of brown filament, not this color but something similar, but I was sent this light tannish color instead. The place I bought the filament from said they could give me a refund if I sent the filament back, but the color I wanted was on back order. I decided to keep the tannish filament and use the remainder of the brown filament I already had. I ended up using both rolls of the tan filament and the rest of my brown filament to print the tavern. I didn't have enough of either filament to finish the last bit of the roof, so I used some leftover white filament. I wasn't expecting this set to take up so much space, and it didn't fit in my crafting area when fully assembled, so that's why it's on this little folding table. Before I started painting, I loaded my copy of The Witcher 3 to get some reference images of the White Orchard Inn. I could have found some images online, but I wanted to take my own screenshots and use some for my video thumbnails. I didn't expect a glitch to occur or that it would happen as soon as I traveled to White Orchard. Whoa, what the hell? Okay. Anyway, I sprayed each roof piece with black primer and left them to dry outside for about a day to get rid of the paint smell. When the primer had completely dried, I used a dark brown acrylic paint to cover the surface of each piece. I thought this color was a little too dark considering that the roof of the White Orchard Inn is much lighter, but I was planning on dry brushing the lighter colors over the surface, so I didn't think too much about this. It took longer than expected to paint each piece, and I left them to dry for several hours after I finished. I didn't want to risk starting the dry brushing process while the base coat of paint was still drying, because that would cause the paints to mix rather than layer on top of each other. I had prepared 2 shades of light brown paint to use for the dry brushing. One shade was slightly darker than the other, and my plan was to layer both shades over the brown base coat to create the appearance of a thatched roof. The first layer of dry brushing also took longer than I expected, and I decided to finish the painting off camera. It wasn't until I finished the dry brushing that I realized the base coat was in fact too dark. There was no way to fix this without starting over with a lighter color base coat. The fastest way to accomplish this was to use spray paint and cover everything. I was going to go out and buy some light brown spray paint when I found a can among my painting supplies. I regretted not inspecting my spray paint collection a little more thoroughly, because I might have been okay with using this paint from the start instead of spending so much time with the black primer and the dark brown acrylic. I resprayed the roof pieces and set them aside to dry. I'll finish them in the next part of this project, so thanks for watching my video, and check back next week to see how the roof pieces turned out.